Hello, everybody. My name is Khadijah Ali-Coleman, and I wanted to be able to answer one of our teaching questions as a homeschooling mother and as a researcher who focuses on homeschooling students. Um, the question that I wanted to address is this question about what our needs are as a Black family homeschooling community. And I think it's really important that I think that our biggest need is to understand that there are really no experts, no gurus, no one who can tell you what is the best pathway for you and your family as a newly homeschooling family, or even one that's seasoned. I think that this teaching in itself is offering you all an opportunity to get the personal testimonies of many different types of homeschooling families, so that you understand that each person, each homeschooling parent who has shared their story so far during this teach-in is explaining to you that the experience was uniquely their own. And even if you are to hire somebody, work with somebody who calls themselves a homeschool consultant, or can help counsel you or advise you, one of the things that you need to understand going into that process is that they can't tell you anything that you shouldn't already know and own about yourself, your wants and your intentions for your child. And I say this because a lot of people are beginning to enter this process of homeschooling from a perspective that it's really about recreating a traditional schooling experience inside your home. But as many of the teaching speakers have already said in different ways, some very similar to each other, that when you embark on homeschooling, you're going to soon find out who your child is as a learner, who you are as a curator of their learning experience, in terms of knowing what you have the capacity to provide for your child, what it is that you want your child to know or experience, and what then becomes part of that learning journey, right? And so, in answer to the question, I think that it is important for you to really feel confident in knowing that someone outside of you is not going to necessarily know better than you just because they may have homeschooled longer. What they can do is be aware of resources and things that you can then use to include in your homeschooling practice.
Hi, my name is Kari. I am a junior in high school currently, and I am homeschooled.
And so you just finished your junior year, right? You're moving into your senior year, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And so you say you also are a student who's dual enrolled. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, so I've been dual enrolled since I think the beginning of high school. I started at a different college, and I got my credits and stuff, but the college just wasn't really right for me. So I'm started going to another college, which is better, and it's been specifically good for me because it's like a mix because I like being around people sometimes, but then I also get the opportunity to come home and like have days where I can just be by myself and work by myself and be at my own pace. So yeah, it's definitely my thing, like it's good for me.
In homeschooling, she decided for middle school she was going to go to this school. She went there for 2 years, and then she opted after 8th grade. She said, "Mommy, I would like to be homeschooled again." And so that is what led her back to the fold to be homeschooled. And these are some things that she had to say about the experience.
This might be intense, but it was kind of like a dictatorship. And it was just very like, kind of, since I'm an adult, I can treat you in any way that I feel is right because I'm an adult and you're a child. And that wasn't like right for me. So yeah, after middle school, I didn't really want to attend public school anymore.
I didn't know. So, we never talked about that because so for middle school, you were in a performing arts school. And just for the record, so the audience will know, the performance arts school was very different than the environment that is general in our county where people have to wear uniforms. So in your middle school, you didn't have to wear a uniform. And it was really this first impression that you all were encouraged to have your own identity. And it wasn't so restrictive, but what you're saying is that wasn't necessarily the truth about it.
Like, yeah, in some ways, like, nobody at school was allowed to wear head wraps. And it was just a lot of restrictions against, like, the clothing that girls wore, and things like that.
Versus boys. So, yeah. I remember you being very upset about the head wraps because that was like your head wrap heyday. You were, because that was the transition from having your locks where you took all your locks out and you started to wear head wraps. And so I feel like that rule kind of came about because of you. I think, was there anyone else at your school wearing head wraps like you to that degree?
To be honest, I think that I started it because the head wrap rule was in place, but people weren't like enforced. Like, I came to school with it and nobody kind of like enforced the rule and made me take it off. And so I was like wearing it every day, and then like everybody else was like starting to do it because they realized that I wasn't getting in trouble for it. And so then everybody started to do it, and then the rules started getting enforced.
I had no idea. Look at the things that we learn about our children. I had no idea. For her 9th grade year, we started the first semester with her being part of a co-op, which by now you should know what a homeschool cooperative is, where parents have made the decision to either gather and take turns teaching different subjects to their children. These are different parents with their children learning together, or they hire consultants to come in and to teach. And usually cooperatives are small and intimate, but then you have some that are larger where there may be 10 or more children in the class, but typically they're smaller groups. And this cooperative that my daughter was in, it was a science-based cooperative. And so she took chemistry, a math course, I think it was trig, and sociology. And she didn't really like the experience, mainly because, again, as we had experienced in previous years, where she had been in co-ops where there were a lot of boys, and she was just like, it's just so many. This co-op, it was a lot of younger children. So for her, it's been a matter of a fit. So she really enjoyed, as she said, she enjoyed public school for the social element, because the friends that she met in middle school, she's still friends with now going into 12th grade. But in homeschooling, that has consistently been an issue with interacting with people that are her age or her level or higher. So after that first semester in 9th grade, she was like, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to do it. I said, well, what other option, because she liked to have the opportunity to have time where it was just her at home with me and we going out and doing things, or her dad, but also in environments where there were other learners. So I said, well, you can start college. We can give that a whirl. And that's how she began becoming a dual enrolled high school student. Her second semester of ninth grade, then we enrolled her in a local community college where she tested into college English courses, and she took her English 101 and she took a sociology class for credit. And then that summer, she was in a program at the University of Maryland where she took a class for credit there. And so from then on, she just started taking more and more. It went from taking 1 or 2 classes to taking a semester of 3 or 4 classes. And now going into her senior year, she has about 39 credits now. And she's going into her senior year to take the final 7 classes that she needs to have her final, her 60 credits that she needs to be able to graduate with an associate's. And she plans to then go transfer to a 4-year institution. So dual enrollment is an option for families and children who have expressed an interest in college. And it's an opportunity for for high school students to get a head start on college courses. It's not really a head start. In our case, as I said, it was really because she was ready. So it wasn't even that thought, you can start doing this now for college. It was, I'm really sick of homeschool cooperatives and I'm ready to be in an atmosphere where I can start engaging in discourse with people who are my age or older. And so far, she's really enjoyed, particularly her major is English. She's a writer and she's a reader. So, and she also is a film auteur. She loves film, dissecting films. She wants to start making them. And so she likes to be in courses where she's learning from people who have actually done, they're writers or they're filmmakers, and then those in the class are artists pretty much. And so college provided that space for her now in high school that we haven't really been able to find within homeschool collectives. And so that was an example of, it wasn't necessarily just a matter of doing this for the future, but what her interests were right now in terms of what she was interested in learning. And so I wanted to just share. So my research actually has to do with students African American homeschooled children who are also dual enrolled. And I wanted to just end my talk with some of my findings for those of you who are looking to dual enroll or considering, as you homeschool high school students, what that could possibly look like. I wanted to share some of my findings in my research to let you really know what these indicators of preparedness that some of these children have identified. For those who are curious about whether or not dual enrollment is something that you should consider for your homeschool child, what the research shows that in general, dual enrolled students and students who are homeschooled prior to enrolling in college are more apt to graduate from college. They have higher GPAs and they have higher persistence rates overall. When we talk about persistence is attending college all the way through with persisting with little to no stops or gaps in between your matriculation, right? Persistence is pushing through, right? While graduation is graduation rates. Retention rates are those where the person is still a student and they haven't dropped out completely. And so in general, when looking at numbers and comparing students who are homeschooled as opposed to those traditionally schooled before entering college, the research shows that homeschool students almost always have a higher proportion of their population to persist, and be retained, have higher retention numbers, and to graduate. And not only graduate, but graduate with higher GPAs. The same is for dual enrolled students, whether they were homeschooled or whether they were traditionally schooled. Dual enrollment is where they are still in high school while they are taking college courses, okay? And so when we are thinking about dual enrollment is usually a choice if a child has expressed interest in getting a head start on college, or has has demonstrated a readiness to be part of a college culture. And so community colleges are where a lot of people, most people who are students who are dual enrolled, begin at a community college, okay? And community colleges in general are where almost half of undergraduate college students begin their college education, whether they're dual enrolled or not. And that's something that I think folks don't really know, because community colleges often have such a bad rap as being 13th grade, or being for only slow people, or some type of negative connotation that you've given to others, where you've othered people that attend community college as being those folks, but not you. I will say that I am so ashamed of the ignorance that abounded and that I grew up in when I was younger regarding community colleges. I will always remember being 15 years old in my journalism class in high school. I was in ninth grade, or 10th grade, excuse me, and I was in a class with a bunch of seniors who were sharing happily the colleges that they had gotten accepted into. And one girl, I always remember, Monique, was like, y'all, I'm going to PG Community College, which is a local community college in my campus. And everyone paused and they said, for real, girl? And she was like, psych, and they all started laughing. So I'm like, what's a community college? What's this? And she was like, girl, you don't want to go to a community college, because that's where you go when you can't get accepted anywhere else. And I will always remember that. I was 15 years old. I had never heard of a community college before, and that was my introduction to it. There was no teacher around to contradict that or to say, don't listen to her, da, 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 da. The reality is that more than half of, or almost half of undergraduate students in the US begin their college education there. And those numbers are only increasing as more and more students are becoming dual enrolled. And so community colleges, and I recall people having conversations when Obama was in office, and he created this whole America Promise, where community colleges were going to be funded, where some folks can attend them for free, and how, why a community college? Why not universities? Well, the reality is that community colleges provide so much in ways of access and affordability for families, where the caliber of teaching is often not different than what you will receive in a four-year institution. I have taught in both. A community college, a university setting, and the expectations were the same in terms of what just the level of professionalism and content that was expected from me as a professional, and what I expected from my students. And so I think that it's very important that we as homeschooling parents understand that the stigma that community colleges are fighting against is usually the same kind of type of stigma that we as homeschooling parents are fighting against, in terms of just the ignorance that people have about what homeschoolers and homeschooling is or can be. And so when we talk about African American achievement, it's usually this comparative look to what white students are experiencing. And that is what I overwhelmingly found in the literature. And when it came to college success, when success was looked at African American males in particular, it was always compared to everyone else, and African Americans' persistence being lower. But again, the earlier slide that I showed, when those children were homeschooled or dual enrolled, the numbers look vastly different. So I interviewed last year about 8 students who are from different states: Texas, Virginia, Maryland, and I forget another state where I had children from. But these were all children who were in high school age, different years, different ages, but all dual enrolled at a community college, right? And so I asked them, I interviewed them one-on-one. I had a focus group that included 2 of them together answering questions. And all of these questions that I asked them revolved around their perceptions of preparedness for community college. Overwhelmingly, when finding the themes and things that stood out with what they shared with me, there were 5 indicators in particular that stood out, that they indicated made them feel prepared to be in a college setting and be successful as college students. It was the skill of having effective communication, being able to effectively communicate with not only their peers, but also, and most importantly, their professors, communicating their needs if they had questions, communicating other things such as not only speaking, but listening, paying attention to certain things. Cultural identity and awareness, all of them, but with 2 in particular, they gave many examples, but having a sense of who they were culturally. And of course, when we think culturally, we think racially, but for many of them, it was also culturally who they were as learners, who they were as a family. Some of them spoke of their family's choice to homeschool because it was a Christian-based choice. So culture wasn't only race, but race always led the conversation, and having an understanding of who they were as Black children and what that meant for their interactions with the greater world. Time management, having a handle on time management, having the ability and the want to complete coursework, and then having a self-awareness of academic strengths and interests. Again, this knowledge of who they were as a learner, but who they were, what their aspirations were, how what they were studying was connected to who they were or what they wanted to be in the future, or who they were presently. All of that informed their readiness to engage in what it was that they were studying at the community college. And so these indicators of preparedness I found were important to share in this presentation. But what I found the most interesting that I think is important to share in this presentation is that all of these children indicated that their mother was their chief influencer, okay? That their mother served in many essential roles as their educational curator, their math coach, their cultural competency coach, their time manager, the one who provided the early access to college, the college mindset coach, and the writing coach. Dual enrollment provided an opportunity for them to attend college, but to still receive the support from, mostly it would be their mother, but they had they shared openly that being part of co-ops or having a lot of experiential opportunities also provided foundational preparedness, but their mother's influence and consistent support before enrolling in college and through college allowed them to feel at their most successful when matriculating through their coursework. All of the children were not at the same level. I interviewed one young lady who had finished all the courses she was going to take, or had set out to take at community college, and was literally was interviewed by me right before she was getting ready to to start at her four-year institution that she had gotten accepted into to study to become a doctor. There were other students who were in their last year of high school, and they had taken a course or two there, knowing that they wanted to transfer to a four-year, so they weren't as interested in getting associates, where there were other students who were interested in getting associates and then going into the world of work, whereas the remaining students wanted to get an associate's and then transfer to a four-year institution. So none of them were the same. None of them had the same aspirations, but all of them found value in their mother as their influencer. And I think that reinforces my opening statement in terms of answering a question. What do we need, and what needs to be known is that moms, we are overwhelmingly the main homeschooling parent when it comes to homeschooling in general. While researchers have found that the traditional homeschooling family, when in white communities, is a two-parent household, the mother is still usually the main person homeschooling. In Black families, we have a lot more mothers who are homeschooling as single parents. And whether single parent, whether in a two-parent household, whether it's grandparent, whatever, the mother is still typically the primary curator of the experience that the children are having while being homeschooled. And it's important for you to know that. It's important for you to know that when you are seeking help or have questions from other folks, that you need to have and have developed an intention that you have for your practice. Even if you are still taking in resources and ideas from other people, you are the one that has the capability of knowing your child best. You could even include them as a co-curator of their learning experience, but no one outside of you is going to be able to tell you more about your child, or should be able to tell you more about your child than what you already know. And so I say that as closing, I thank you for listening. I have started on Facebook a group, dual enrolled homeschool students group, that I invite you to join if you are currently homeschooling a high school student, so we can share ideas. I started the group with not the intention of being an expert, but it being a place to continue to share my research, but also my experiences and some fellowship with other parents as my child is finishing up her high school years. Thank you so much for listening, and I wish you the best on your homeschooling journey.